So I have got, as always, on Thursday night, we have Bradford Ferguson from rebellionaire.com. I got it right this time. You should
Yes.
you should be congratulating me. Who is the co-host on the Thursday edition of Good News Thursday. And there's a lot of good news tonight. I don't know how much of it involves Tesla, but there was an awful lot of good news in general tonight. So let's just dig in, Bradford,
Yeah.
and take a
Good.
look. All right. So number one, let's talk about Texas. I believe you had some thoughts on the subject of Tesla moving to Texas corporately.
Yeah, Meyer Thacker, he did some calculations and found out that the tax or fee to be in Texas would be over $200 million a year. Now, one reason why corporations like Delaware is they limit that fee to $200,000 a year, so 1,000 times smaller. But and Delaware is supposed to be much more friendly to corporations in general in the court system, so they like to incorporate there to give themselves a little more legal protection and lower the cost of business. But Tesla's finding out that maybe the cost of being incorporated in Delaware is much higher than they thought. So people are wondering if Tesla's going to be reincorporating in Texas. Did Elon say they were going to do that, or?
Well, all he said is that that's now because everybody voted and said yes, that now the board would take it up, I guess, and contemplate if that is going to be the move. Of course, there's other options. A lot of California corporations go to Nevada. Apparently,
Mhm.
that's also low tax and theoretically good for corporations. Utah has thrown their hat in the ring and said that that's a really good place to go. So anyway,
Mhm.
we'll see what comes out of all this. But certainly I've of course already opined 15 times at least on how horrible the Chancellery Court was in their decision on all levels. I don't know if
Mhm.
was there anything specific you'd love to add to that overall conversation?
Well, Tesla can kind of redo stuff from the package. Of course, I disagree with the ruling in general. Um, I think shareholders knew what they were voting for. They knew that Elon has a cozy relationship with a number of board members. It's really no secret. So I'm just a kid in Indiana. If I can find out about the board members and their long ties to Elon, then I'm sure most investors could figure that out. Um, so the Chancellery Court basically said that Tesla needs to disclose all this and has to do a redo. But it may be complicated. Um, so the gap accounting cost of Elon's options was about $3 billion. Um, but if you did it today, it'd be over $50 billion.
Oh, really? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So even though it isn't a cash expense, if shareholders voted to just give him back his package, there would be over $50 billion hit to their gap earnings potentially. Again, it'd be non-cash, but it would be kind of like almost like this weird black eye. So like when anyone who would look backwards at Tesla's earnings, they would see this huge loss on their books. And the reason for that is the options Elon has or had,
Yes, yes.
um, they have a significant value. They're deep in the money, and typically when stock options are given, they're out of the money or right at the
Yes,
money.
yes.
Another potential problem is I'm not a CPA, but if you're given options that are in the money, you may owe tax
Immediately.
when you receive them. So instead of paying a tax when you exercise them, you may owe tax when you receive them. So if if shareholders gave Elon, over $50 billion in stock options, then he would owe over 20 billion in taxes, and he doesn't have the cash for that.
So you have
And
to
he would just
sell.
be getting the stock options, like he's not getting cash too. Um, so they may not be able to give Elon the same thing.
Hmm,
And there's one more problem.
okay.
So I was feeling pretty good about this, like after we heard the news and listening to Larry and some other folks. The other problem is the judge said that for cases over $1 billion, that the typical lawyer fee is 15%, and
15%.
this would come out to like $5 billion or more. So in a case about excessive compensation, the judge is awarding excessive compensation to the law firm.
Lawyer, yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, so Tesla may be out of that $5 billion legal fee. Um, so it it may be troublesome for them to just have a redo.
Yeah, and of course, I don't think just a redo is in the cards. I believe they will appeal. And
Mm,
this is not legal. This is not a legal statement, just a general statement. I certainly think they would win on appeal, but you're talking about you're still within the state of Maryland, and they might decide that they want to
Delaware, you mean?
Delaware. I'm sorry, Delaware, and they might decide they're little tiny states over there that think they're bigger than they are. Anyway, and then there's Rhode Island, right? Anyway, so I would think they'd appeal. They should win. I think it was so poorly ruled on that I'd be shocked if somebody didn't take a second look at that and go, "Are you kidding me?" But
Mm,
maybe they would. Obviously, they'd be appealing based on any decision of what the attorneys were paid as well, and so that might be overturned. I don't think this is appealable to the Supreme Court because it's a state's issue. I'm
mm,
not sure there's any federal jurisdiction at all on this, but again, not legal, not my legal understanding.
yeah.
So anyway, yeah, crazy stuff. Well, is there any?
And the lawsuit was filed in June of 2018. Shareholders in 2019, they knew what the compensation plan was all about.
Right.
Um, so I wish I heard more from the judge or knew more about the comments of like what Tesla was missing in their disclosures. I didn't read like the whole ruling, maybe it's in there, but if the exhibits that were online about the pay package were, from what the Tesla disclosed, like they disclosed plenty. And I was a shareholder in 2019, and I knew that if Elon won to the pay package, that he'd make a lot of money, that it'd be like $65 billion or something like that.
Yeah,
So um I don't feel shareholders were truly in the dark.
not at all. In fact, but again, the other side of it was nobody thought he'd make it. I don't think most shareholders thought he would make it, or he might make one or two of the tranches, but not all 10. I mean, it was considered to be the craziest pay package ever offered.
In 2018, I agree, but like the hardcore Tesla investor who is all in,
Yep.
and these are the kind of people that we serve at rebellionaire.com,
Right.
is they they invested with an eye toward Elon's pay package, assuming he would get it.
Yeah. Yeah. You
And
have to.
I kind of did too. I wasn't like relying my life savings on it, or like my ability to eat or anything on it, but um I think a lot of people did believed it could happen. I don't think they thought it would happen quite as quickly, possibly, but
Right. Right. It was certainly within the realm of possibility to a bull, but to the
the
street, there's
the other
multiple.
common belief was like when Tesla was $50 billion, people were asking the question, why isn't the Tesla the most valuable car company? Why is Toyota worth more or whatever? And, you know, that has changed.
It's changed. So anyway, I assume, well, first of all, no, I don't assume anything. If whatever the legal and the accounting things that have to be done,
Mhm.
do you think most of your Rebellionaire folks want Elon to have his 25% voting rights, regardless of how it turns out financially for Elon?
Yeah, I'd say like within reason, yeah. I I think we all want Elon to be motivated. We've all like many rebellionaires have become wealthy because of Elon and because of Elon, like this whole pay package and this whole stretch that happened. Obviously there's over 100,000 employees at Tesla now, but even back then it was 40,000.
Right?
There's a lot of people to make it happen, but um, it just felt really weird because many lives have been changed because of Elon. You have the employees, you have all the suppliers, um, and all the safety aspects of Tesla. But then you have all the people who own the stock as well, and it just is weird to see his options taken away when um, you know we're still sitting on this benefit of the shares that we own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there are people today on X saying that Tesla is dead without Elon. Others say Tesla is Elon. But there are 140,000, as you just said, other employees, and the products are all, most of the products are either already under production or they're well along, to where maybe the engineers that would still be there could carry the ball if Elon left for some reason or if he wasn't as engaged. What do you think?
I think Tesla would potentially slow down their growth if Elon wasn't CEO. You need the thing about Steve Jobs wasn't just that he was a visionary, is that he regularly shook things up. And Jim Killer talked about this, I believe it was with Lex Fridman,
Mm.
um, where you need someone that's going to shake things up, even if it's like inappropriate, kind of inappropriate what they do. You need that uh, someone to shake things up and to kind of keep people on their toes and to be driving things forward. Large companies can easily become bureaucratic and complacent. Um, so if it wasn't Elon, then you need someone that's really going um, to drive things.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So switching to the general economy today, which was, and other stocks, which was a lot of huge interest today. So Fed Chair Powell said that one likely reason that the economy has stayed strong while inflation has dropped precipitously was due to productivity. And he said the other big reason was just the natural unwinding of these supply chain imbalances. Now he's saying that those imbalances have largely been normalized and suggesting that any downward pressure on cost is going to have to come from economic activity, thus margins, meaning margins dropping, are from continued gains in productivity, such as AI. So do you think the normalization of these imbalances has worked out to such an extent that we're not going to get more productivity gains from that normalization?
So when you're short things like transformers, that slows the economy down. And when you get them in better supply, that would provide a temporary productivity boost that wouldn't necessarily persist to the next year. Um, so to the extent that's happened with important pieces of the economy or pieces of the supply chain, I'd say that's correct. Um, but there's still things that are we have shortages on, like transformers.
Yeah.
and we still have like other issues like the interconnect queue with hooking up to the grid. If you're a new data center, factory, hospital, school, etc., big user of electricity, you likely have to wait 3 to 5 years to hook up to the grid. There's all these studies that are done. They figure out how all these new users of power, how it all interacts together. Um, and it's a time-consuming process. Um, and that's not resolved with, changes to the supply chain and all that. Um, I'm hopeful that some of these productivity gains are because of AI. Um, and yeah, I'm curious what you have to say on the matter too.
Okay. So, we had good numbers again on productivity, and I am a productivity, that's one of my favorite things. And
Mhm.
they came in, I think, if I remember correctly, at 3.3 after being almost over 5. I think they were 4.9 or 5 last
Mhm.
quarter. So a little down from last quarter, but last quarter was really during the unwind. I mean, the third quarter of last year, we were really seeing the impact of normalization. So I think it's correct that we have less normalization that will be impacting us. But I do think a lot of companies are still hanging on to employees because I think there's still an employee shortage out there. So I think
Mhm.
I'm starting to hear more layoffs, especially in tech and in finance and banks. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a little more productivity happening in those major categories. But I would like to see the productivity, like you're talking about, start to come from innovation rather than
Mhm.
just from unwinding. And there's certainly a lot of innovation out there. So
It's a really interesting point you make, is like sometimes contradictory. You have productivity gains as you let some people go.
yes,
And there's companies that overhired during COVID. Um, and in, with those companies, the newer hires or the B and C or D players, they slow down the A players and the rock stars. And we found that out with Twitter, which became X, where they're much more productive with far fewer number of employees. I think Meta even began to let go of some people. Google's letting go people.
right.
They're taking kind of a random approach. um, so I'm not sure how that's going to go with Google, but um, yeah, it's interesting that we may see some continued layoffs, but gains in productivity. What do you think about that?
No, that's a fact. I mean, there's you can, I'll never forget the day I had a consultant come in and tell me where to cut my payroll. I mean, it was people that I thought I needed. And he said, you don't need these people. You will be just fine without them. And
Mhm.
it was a lot of money. I believe I was doing about 5 million in sales at that point, and we're talking about, if I remember right, about 125,000 in cuts. That's
Mhm.
pretty significant. And so yeah, almost every company has those capabilities of finding those cuts, and also of finding ways to become more productive, to increase their output. So I suspect that there'll be a lot of emphasis on that over the next few months from big and small companies, because I think it's going to be a lot more competitive this year than what people have seen the last couple of years, where if you had it in stock, you probably were okay.
Mhm.
So we also had manufacturing showing negative today for the 19th month in a row, but not as negative based on reporting. I don't think manufacturing is going to be the savior, and it's 10% of the economy, but I don't think it's going to slip much more either. You have any thoughts about manufacturing?
We still have a bit of onshoring going on. Corporations continue to emphasize, having a supply chain that's based in North America, and in the Five Eyes type countries like the UK, Australia, etc. Um, I think we'll still. I think that'll offset some of the slide in general. Um, I'm wondering where. the manufacturing cutbacks are happening. I know Legacy's cutting back on some of their models. So when a given model, when the sales decline to a certain point, they end up like having to shut that factory down. We've heard some of that, but not a ton.
One of the things
Where do you think we're seeing that manufacturing cutbacks?
I think it has to do with slower sales, in particular of your durables. But just in general, things that are made in America, you know, the kinds of things that are available to make in America right now, there's either inventory or there's no demand. So I was in the bicycle industry for all those years. Typically, on a boom bust cycle, you see the items coming back into fashion again, if you will, a year later. And I've seen for my entire career. You have one really bad year where people going out of business and all the rest. And then the next year, things kind of come back to normal, or maybe even good. This time we're on our second year. We won't know in the bicycle industry until May or June whether it's going to be a good year or not. But we've already had our 2 years of really slow business after the boom that happened during COVID. So that's true for refrigerators. That's true for, just go down the line. And both Home Depot got downgraded today because the folks this particular pundit, whoever it was, our analyst, believes that they're not going to come back this year. So, it's those kind of things, I think, that are holding up manufacturing in the United States. Not so much the cars, although that's also still way down from typically, the 17 to 18 million a year, down in around the 16 million level. That's pretty significant.
You're talking about a very large company, not growing at all potentially this year. The S&P 500, according to Meyer Thacker, their earnings didn't grow last year. And the Wall Street's anticipating that the earnings growth resumes to like 5 to 10%. And what if it doesn't? And we're starting to hear about disappointment after disappointment. So I'm wondering if that trend continues or not. I've heard that, guidance generally has been disappointing.
Yeah. Generally so far. Well, first of all, the beats have not been by that much. And then the guidance has also been a little thin. Yeah. So now on the other side of the coin, 20% of the market is housing. And the commerce, we had construction spending increasing more than expected in December among a surge in single family home building. And further gains are expected as mortgage rates decline. The Commerce Department said on Thursday, construction spending rose 9.9%. That's like over 10% year over year. And data for November was increased. It had been at 0.4. They increased it to also 0.9. So 2 months in a row at 0.9% on construction spending. We also saw construction spending up 13.9 year over year and increased 7%. What does that make? That doesn't make sense. Okay. Anyway, generally, the key is outlays on new single-family construction projects jumped 1.6% in December. So at 20% of the economy,
that's a big number for 1 month.
That's a big number for 1 month.
13 or so percent year over year. I think
18%. 18%. Oh well.
Wow.
Yeah, that 1.6. If you did 1.6 and annualized, you'd be at 19%. So.
But I think year over year is 13 some percent, maybe
13.9 construction spending.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of building, and the Fed doesn't like that. The Fed was hoping that raising rates would take away this construction spending, and like help ease some of those shortages that we're seeing in things like transformers. So the Fed definitely doesn't like this construction spending number. And yet they want to take all the giddiness and the excitedness and the bullishness out of the economy.
And yet 40% of the CPI is based on housing and rents. And one of the big saving graces right now is that rents are almost flat because there was so much multifamily housing built last year. And so we
Mhm.
have a little bit of a glut on the market right now. And then we need a glut from new home construction,
Mhm.
because that's where the individual, residential housing is where we're really short, and the prices just keep going up no matter what.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, we can hope that the Fed doesn't get their way with regard to new family construction. I mean, new residential construction.
Mhm.
Trueflation put out a note today. I've been so angry with Trueflation for a while because
Why is that?
they keep changing their formulas. They keep
Mhm.
getting, it's great. They're getting new data, which should make them more, more useful. But when they get the new data, all of a sudden the numbers jump up and down like crazy. So this
Mhm.
week, they've actually started giving us some notes from time to time when things jump a lot. Well, they jumped, I guess that wouldn't be the right word. They jumped into a hole today. They
Mhm.
dropped from 1.9, I think it was 1.97% yesterday, to
Mhm.
1.44 today. So we're
Mhm.
looking on year over year, 1.44 for their equivalent of the CPI. It's the lowest amount recorded in the company history. I think they've only been open for a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years. Most measured categories in the Trueflation basket are showing a decrease, 10 out of 12, with apparel, recreation, and transport the biggest drops out of the bunch. So if this is correct, now the reason it dropped so much in a day, of course, is you got a lot of end of month data in, and their
Mhm.
data is immediate, right? It's like now. So when
Mhm.
data comes in, they put it in now, and so it's as close to being real time as we can get right now. And so all that data came in today. They've got some more to say about it, but I thought I'd stop here and just, what do you think about the fact that we're now, theoretically anyway, at 1.5%? The Fed didn't want to get under 2.
I think this is generally good news. They calculate inflation differently than the Fed does, but ideally you want to calculate inflation on how consumers are really spending their money.
Yeah,
And so you do have to change your indexes and how you calculate that on a regular basis. If people aren't eating eggs as much anymore, then you got to make some kind of adjustment there. Like eggs get de-emphasized or
right,
whatever.
right.
I think I remember there was one month where like eggs went way up,
Crazy.
and people were talking about it recently. Um, I think I thought though, one thing was funny is, Powell had a speech and he came out and said, and they'd never do this. He said there will be no rate cut in March.
I know.
I've been telling you this, Randy, for a couple months now.
Well,
But
so
now Powell said it and everyone believes it.
I don't believe it. I still don't believe it. The bond market doesn't believe it. The bond market just went a total rally after the
Mhm.
Fed speech. It's continuing to rally in the after hours tonight. So it's been rallying ever since. So obviously the bond market doesn't believe it. And so here's what they went on to say. The departure from the traditional narrative of inflation raises concerns about the potential onset of deflation, ushering in a host of challenges and opportunities that extend far beyond the economic sphere. The fear of deflation can prompt individuals to delay spending, expecting even lower prices in the future. This delay in consumption may overreact the immediate benefits of increased affordability. It's a big fear, and Japan recently went through this. China's going through it now. So a lot of people don't realize why deflation is bad. It's like, no, I think deflation's good. I'd rather pay less.
Mhm.
But there's a whole bunch of things that happen, including corporate valuations. So corporate valuations go down because sales will be lower even if you sell the same number of units. So these are some of the problems with deflation. What are your thoughts?
And I do have a Model 3 Plus story to tell you by the time we go.
Okay,
So, the thing about deflation, I wonder if one reason why some Tesla sales have struggled is if people are waiting for further price drops.
sure.
I wonder
Absolutely.
if that's
Same
part of
reasoning.
it.
Same reasoning. Absolutely. It has been
Mhm.
suggested by others. Yes, very likely,
Y-
especially in China. where they're very, very sensitive to it.
Mhm. What I think like an economy should allow itself to adjust over time. And there's this huge fear about deflation. But like if we're over consuming, we should let that end and adjust. Um, I don't think it should be feared. So I'm glad in a way Trueflation said there's like challenges and opportunities with deflation. Um, what if we had deflation in medical care with Tesla bot, helping people in nursing homes you know, or like not having to worry about your loved one getting abused in a nursing home
Yeah,
because of go
Yeah,
ahead.
Cathie Wood speaks to that all the time. That's good deflation. So when
Mhm.
you have deflation that comes about as a result of innovation, there's nothing wrong with that kind of deflation. Oh, it can still hurt your company.
Yeah.
My ex-partner in business, he was in the calculator business when a calculator went from being this size to this size and went from being $125 to $12. And of course, you've got your inventory on the way that you
Mhm.
that you've paid this much for, and by the time it hits the shore, it's already lower at retail than you paid for it. So there are transitory issues that you have to deal with, even when the deflation is caused by innovation or by being more productive. But the ones that come as a result of lack of of lack of consumer demand, those kinds
Mhm.
of ones that end up spiraling. And the spiral is, I can't, I don't want to go buy it right now because I'm going to buy it cheaper later, or because I don't have enough money to, or whatever it is. Now there's layoffs because the company doesn't have to make as many. The layoffs mean there's not as much money in the economy, so there's not enough money to buy the things anyway, and you get the
Yeah.
spiral. So that's what you want to avoid. That's what Japan went through, and why their economy was basically stalemated for what, 30 years?
Yeah, people talk about Japan like it was bad, but like Japan got very excessive. You had like I don't know, like these golf memberships that cost like $250,000, and it just things got nutty in Japan. And there was a song like I think I'm turning Japanese. It's because like um the Japanese were getting so rich they were buying real estate in America, and all this stuff was going on. Um and their population is shrinking. So like if you have a population that's not not even not growing but shrinking, um maybe a little deflation is okay. Um
Well, you're
you
probably going
need
to
to
get, yeah,
like
just for that reason.
an economy is a living breathing organism,
Yep.
and you need to allow it to live in a healthy way. um so yeah, I don't think we should fear deflation, and I'm hopeful that some of it will happen because of supply chain coming back online. That'll bring its own productivity boosts and all that. But um, if it leads to a better standard of living, um, if us driving cars or getting rides in cars less expensively,
Right.
getting power to our homes less expensively, I think it'd be great.
Oh, no, productivity is always excellent. Well, you and I have both lived now in a world where productivity has just been growing
Mhm.
very, very nicely for a long, long time, and it's made the world wealthy. So there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. That's it's always going to be a good thing, even if you might have a few short-term hiccups. So the last question I have with regard to the Fed was, we've had this issue now with real interest rates. And right now, if you use the method that most people use, called the Taylor method, the Taylor rule, the Atlanta Fed suggests that the Fed's target rate should be 3.47 to 4.3, or in other words, I don't know, 200 basis points lower than it is. So what do you think in terms of the impact of being so far, the Treasury bills being so far, so high compared to the true rate of interest that should be being charged?
So we're close to that on the 10-year though, right? Yeah,
Getting
maybe not on
closer
the
every
short
day.
term.
It's 3.8 or something.
Yeah. So I think short-term rates will come down to that level. It's just a question of like how quickly and when it starts and the shape of it.
Okay, all right. We have three companies that reported after hours. I don't want to spend a ton of time because this is not a channel about Meta or about Apple, but I'm sure that you're very interested, and you probably the folks that you deal with are very interested in these three companies as they are part of the Magnificent Seven, and it was quite interesting too. So Kobesi says in his letter today, Meta stock soars 13%. After beating earnings expectations, they announced a quarterly dividend and a $15 billion stock buyback. A 50, did I say 15? A 50, $50 billion. That was actually an increase in an existing stock buyback. Kobesi, you need to get it right. Okay, the stock has added 130 billion in market cap in 15 minutes. And so for the first time in history, Meta has now got a market cap of over 1.1 trillion. And is officially the seventh largest public company in the world. And then Amazon also beat big time, and they went up about 8 or 9% last time I checked. And Apple beat, but no guidance and some softness in China. So they were actually down just a tad in the after hours. So I'll just leave all that at your feet and let you comment.
Yeah, so Meta's been investing in AI for a long time, and Zuckerberg took a lot of heat for that. They were spending $30 billion on AI infrastructure before it was a cool thing.
Yeah.
Um, so um, it's good for Meta to see the other side of this investment. Curious where Meta takes things. I think this investment for them is generally going to pay off. We'll see if we actually get the metaverse that
Exactly.
Meta,
Right.
rename themselves to, but use of AI and getting value out of that and employing it and with their social networks and their various apps. You know, what about like real time translation of language? And I
Yeah.
think Samsung already has something where you can call someone, you can be talking in English to someone in Japan. They'll see on the screen what you're saying, but you can also have this setting where there's like near real time translation of your phone call.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Meta's going to be implementing this, with probably with WhatsApp and with other things. So these investments are really paying off for them. Um, Apple, earlier in the week, there was some analyst note that said iPhone shipments were going to be down something like 15% this year.
Right.
I don't know if that's totally true, but Apple is less dependent on the iPhone today. They get a lot of revenues from the App Store, and they don't necessarily need people doing new phones to be buying apps or be paying for things on the App Store. You have the Vision Pro coming out. I'm getting that.
Are
So
you?
maybe
All right.
maybe next maybe next episode I'll wear it during the episode or something.
That'd be great. That'd be great. We'd all love to see it.
It'd be that'd be silly fun. And then what the other one was Amazon. Yeah, Amazon's been doing a lot of investing with growing out their infrastructure with their warehouses.
Yeah.
And if you're an investor, you're wondering like, when does Amazon slow down their investment, and then what would profits look like? That's a big unknown. They've been doing a lot of investing outside of the US, so internationally. So people are wondering if those will pay off. They've had investments in other places. I don't know if they tried China yet and failed in China, but um, it, there's been like fits and starts. And Bezos had this thing where he went to India, so I don't know if they're still trying to make a go of India or how that's going. So I'm a little ignorant. I do need to catch up on those calls. I'll probably listen to the earnings calls and just try to understand like how the business is developing over time. Yeah, we've been busy this week, making adjustments in the portfolios, like adding to some names, trimming to some names. Um, yeah, doing a little bit of rebalancing. I do have a Model 3 Plus story to tell
Go
you.
ahead. Absolutely. Do it.
So I'm near Indianapolis, and the Tesla Center here had an upgraded Model 3 that was available for test drives.
Mhm.
The Tesla Owners Club of Indiana was able to get in last night. I think it's like from 5 to 7, and I was able to get a ride, and I was really blown away by the changes. That it's much quieter. So you have the double pane glass, and it's a lot quieter. Like my brain didn't know what to do. Like it was wanting noise that wasn't that. I mean, that was there, but it was just um, deadened by the car.
Yeah.
The seats were a lot nicer. The feel on the doors was much improved. When you hit the button to open the door, it y- on the 3 and Y as they are, there's like this uncertainty where you hear a kathunk and it kind of like opens a crack, but you're not certain like what you're supposed to do next.
Oh, I see.
Where with this, it's more audible, it's a more satisfying sound. I know that sounds weird. And the door opens noticeably.
I see. Uh-huh.
So like there's no confusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the trunk has two motors now, whereas before it had one. So it does open differently. The back of the three looks much nicer in person than
Oh,
the photos. Like it looks fine in the photos, but it it looks very noticeably different than the old three
ah,
when you see it in person.
ah,
It's almost got a feel of an S a little bit.
ah.
And the suspension is just much smoother. So you're not there might be a little vibration from each of the cracks in the road, but you don't feel it as much as you do in your 3 or Y, even with your S. Like the S, or we have an X Plaid, like the suspension's nice on that, but in some ways it felt smoother with
Wow.
an upgraded 3.
Holy mackerel. Because yeah, we on our Y, that's probably the only complaint my wife has ever had on it, is that the suspension was more like my Volvo S60, more like a sports car, little too rough over
Right.
over the pavement. And so that's one of the things I thought right away that this is going to really help the three to sell is just a little more relaxed suspension.
Mhm. So there haven't been many threes made yet.
Mhm.
But they so in one of the recent weeks they made less than 1,000, but they are starting to make them, and it's just it's a much better vehicle. I think if you're bullish Tesla, if you're all in, you owe it to yourself to
Go
do a
try.
test drive on it.
Ah,
Not to go buy one, but
yeah,
to
yeah.
see what the product is like. I think people will be very positively surprised, and I was just like came away from it very bullish, but also realizing that very few people like understand how much better it is. I think a lot of people in Europe uh, are beginning to understand that.
Mhm.
Um, but like Tesla didn't have a big event about it.
Yeah, right.
Not like that would necessarily help, but like people need to know about this somehow. Butts
Very,
and seats.
very, very nice. Very, very nice. Well, that's what we've been hearing.
Mhm.
I've been waiting
That's
to
my
see.
good news.
That's your very good news. That's right. That's well, so because the Model 3 is so good, Tesla is up in the after hours. Only 0.2%, but okay, we'll take whatever we can get. Let's see. And of course, the big one for me always, but certainly this week, is the bonds. So the bonds are down a little bit. The bonds themselves are down. So the yields are up a little bit in the after hours, 1.7 basis points. So, almost 2 basis points, but still sitting at 3.88. So
Mhm.
you may or may not remember that it bottomed out last time at 3.77. And that's my expectation now. I'm believing it'll go back and test the 3.77 level, because there's no reason not to. It might,
Mhm.
and Gary Black, of course, thinks it goes to 3.25. I think he's probably right, but I don't know if that's now or if that's in a month or a couple of months as we get closer to.
Mhm.
There are people already on X and in the financial press that are talking about the fact that now people are starting to just say, okay, if it's May, it's May, but now we have to plan for May. And so
Mhm.
they're taking action now that's based on May, which is what, 4 months away. So it's not that far. So thoughts about the bond rates so that you haven't already said. We've got the inversion is still at point. I'm sorry, I looked at this earlier and I haven't done the math. Inversion right now is about 40 basis points.
Mhm.
So less than it was. It was at 50. It has been though as low as about 25. So it's kind of bounced back. The inversion has widened out again, but not only
Mhm.
back to 50 basis points. But this inversion thing is really crazy. We're at 19 months now, which is a record. It's the longest we've ever had an inversion.
Generally hasn't augured well for the economy,
Generally
so
hasn't augured well, yes. That's true.
we'll see how it goes.
Right. Okay. And we've got oil continuing to sit in the same oil patch that it has been for a while, sitting around 75. So that's pretty much dead center between the 71 and the 77 that it's been for the last couple, 3 weeks. Natural gas up a tiny bit, but it's been beaten down so badly. It's it's barely over 2. So that's pretty low for natural gas. Gold 2072, which is again kind of in the middle of this 1960 to 2070. I mean, I guess
Mhm.
21 something there at one point, 21 and change. So kind of in the range. Copper up a tad in the after hours, our pre-market. Dollar falls a little bit, it says here, because of course, as interest rates drop, the dollar tends to drop with it. Bitcoin up 445 for the day. Now that's an ongoing, it's not a pre-market issue, sitting at
Mhm.
42. Anyway, thoughts on any of that? I don't want to just ramble on if you have any comments that you want to make along there.
No, not really.
All right, well, here's the Dow, here's the equities then. The Dow is
Can I give you something a little juicy about Tesla?
sure a little juicy Tesla note.
Seeing a little bump in Austin, Texas with the Y.
A little bump in Austin, Texas with the Y, meaning
Mhm.
more units per day.
You know how it's kind of been stuck at like,
Yeah,
3,500 or
yeah,
under?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so is this from Tagmeyer or who's saying that it's bumping up?
I
You
don't
can't
want to
tell.
say so.
You can't tell. Have they put on another shift or added another line, or do you know the reason why it's bumping up?
Don't know.
Oh, no. Okay. All right. Just
Don't
no.
know that.
Just no. All right, good. Okay, so we've got the Dow down a tad, S&P up 2350, and the Nasdaq futures up 153, which obviously the Nasdaq's going to be up with all that action that's going on with the Magnificent Seven. Well, you brought additional news, you brought breaking news, you brought insider information. I mean, that's pretty good for, you're doing your job. Are you
It's
looking?
not really insider information. Like you could see the cars leaving the factory, right?
Okay, okay. But it wasn't Joe, it was somebody else. Yeah, okay. We will be thrilled to know that they're making more Ys, because that would mean they feel they have more demand for Ys. So that would be
Yeah.
huge. Yeah,
Hopefully it persists. I'll keep you in the loop.
good, good, good. All right. Anything else for the good of the committee here?
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you as always, Bradford, for joining us for Good News Thursday and for providing some. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.